Welcome back, everyone, to another podcast of Heal Without Harm. Today, we have another special guest. We are keeping the variety high, and the guest that we have today is Jake Jindra. He is a student physical therapist at Wichita State University, finishing his final clinical. As of today, it is in May of this year, so May of 2025, he will graduate from PT school and become a physical therapist. He will be with me for the next 10 weeks, so he is going to be my temporary co-host ultimately. So you'll hear him on some of the podcasts coming up, but it won't be permanent, at least not as of right now. So Jake has had numerous different clinicals at WSU. You will hear about some of those today. We're going to cover about 4 or 5 different topics that he has on request, and then we will just see where the conversation takes us ultimately. So Jake, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks, man. This feels pretty wild to be on a podcast. I've listened to podcasts for so many years, and then to have the opportunity to actually come on one, and one that I actually enjoy listening to.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed listening to your first podcast with Alan, and I love the mission, and I love the name Heal Without Harm. So I'm just thanks for letting me come on and talk a little bit.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to have you, and I think some of the questions that you consistently ask me throughout our time together, I think more people should just hear, more people should know about. And so I'm glad to be able to capture some of these little gems that you ask questions on, and then I answer, and then I just immediately ask you, and then you answer, because you're someone who I think has a very vast knowledge of research, and you have a lot of information in your head, and you haven't had full opportunity to go put that into play. And so it'll be fun during this 10 weeks to see you actually exercise your knowledge and see how it turns into actual application. And then we will keep you kind of coming on here, and we'll probably do another one towards the end to see what all have you learned and what have you taken away from it. So the topics that we will cover today, everybody, is 4 of them are written up there. So we have ways to grow while in PT school. I'm sure there's a lot of unpacking that will come out there. What Jake has learned from each of his clinical rotations, ultimately, including what he wants to learn from this one. He wants to make movement fun again, writes up some stuff about the WHO guidelines and how essentially nobody adheres to it, and then all of the health implications that come from that. And then lastly, learning to train like an athlete, but then also train like an athlete for longevity. So in my eyes, I think longevity is I want to do this as long as possible. So may not be the strongest, fastest person in the room, but I will still be doing this when I'm 90, 95 type of thing, at least is how I interpret it. So let's start with this first one. Ways to grow in PT school. Are you asking how to grow, or are you going to talk about, or do you have suggestions on ways to grow yourself?
Yeah. I wrote that up there just because, as you go through undergrad and then you're coming into PT school and you just get hit with so many different things, and you just have such a packed schedule, and then you kind of start working your way through it, and you're just realizing that how much of this is actually going to help me be a good PT and how much of it is not going to help me become a good PT. So I think trying to weigh that out, make sure you're still getting good grades, make sure you're learning what you can, but how outside of school do I still prepare myself to be a competent clinician as I move into actually practicing once I graduate? So I think that's kind of where I'm going with that.
Okay. I just to make everybody kind of come full circle and kind of know what we're talking about, what does the education look like for a physical therapist? What do you, let's say you graduate from high school and you say, I want to become a physical therapist. What does the schooling look like?
Yeah, so you typically do an undergrad degree. Most people usually go the exercise science route because it's the one that has the most carryover to the profession of physical therapy. So you do your 4-year undergrad, and then you have to do some extra classes that are required, some of those, those fancy science classes in order to get accepted into your PT program. So that would be your Chem 1, 2, your Bio, your Physics 1, your Physics 2, all those science classes, and then some physiology courses. So you have to do that and then go through an application process through as many schools as you want to apply to, and then hopefully you get in. And while you're doing all that, you're also, trying to do as much volunteering as you can, participating in research studies, trying to get a job in some type of healthcare setting. So there's so many different things as an undergrad that you're trying to balance in order to prepare yourself the best to actually get accepted into a PT program.
So you get accepted, and then where does it go from there? How many years are you doing, and what's that look like?
Yeah, so most PT programs in the United States are 3 years. Where the first 2 years is primarily academics, and then the last year is made up of clinical rotations. So, for example, at Wichita State, we have 4 rotations where you actually go out and do what it is that you want to do built into our program. Your first one's 8 weeks, and then you have 3 10-week ones all in your last year.
Okay, that sounds good. Where have you done your clinicals at?
Yeah, so my first one was at St. Francis Hospital in downtown Wichita, which is a level 1 trauma center, which was really fascinating to get to experience. You're working with people who've been in motorcycle crashes. You're working from people who've fallen out of trees. You're working with your geriatric patients who slipped on the ice and fell, or maybe they just have no strength whatsoever, and they have no balance, and they just typically have falls. And one time they had a fall, and next thing you know, they've fractured their femur. So you never know who you're going to get to work with in there, and that was a really unique experience, getting to be up at St. Francis this past summer.
For sure. Where else have you been?
I also did a rotation at Advanced Physical Therapy, the downtown location, and that was primarily outpatient PT, so working with a lot of total hip surgeries, total knees, rotator cuff repairs, and your typical low back pain cases. Okay. That's primarily what we saw.
And then you just got finished up this last fall with somewhere up in Kansas City, is that right?
Yeah, that was my favorite rotation that I've done so far. It was at Fit Muscle and Joint Clinic.
Okay.
And I was in the Leawood location with an awesome clinician. Matt Dobratz is his name, and he's like the go-to sports med guy up there in the Kansas City area. So if any athlete had an injury, they were going to see him. And we were partnered with Rockhurst University. So basically every athlete that got injured was fed into our system. So we got to work with a bunch of ACL repairs, PCL repairs, a lot of ankle sprains, and even got to see a UCL pair with a volleyball player as well. So we got to see a nice variety of stuff up there.
So I think most people, when they think of physical therapy, I mean, even if you just Google those words, you get some stereotypical photos kind of thrown up. It sounds like, if I understand correctly, your first rotation and maybe even the second, that falls more into the stereotypical physical therapy, where it's either like people in the hospital, people needing a lot of help, older people, falls, big injuries and surgeries. Am I barking up the right tree there?
Yeah. My first rotation was a lot of those kind of the primary outpatient kind of scope of PT practice, where you're seeing a lot of post-op individuals. And obviously in the hospital, you just kind of get thrown a little bit of everything, kind of.
How long would you see a patient in the hospital setting? Like how many days?
Yeah, primarily the PTs at St. Francis see the patient for the initial evaluation, and then you don't see them again.
Okay, so you're not even really... It's not that you're not treating, but you're mostly just evaluating and moving on?
Yeah. Essentially, we're there to provide the evaluation, provide the discharge plan for the individual. You know, are they going to be going to a skilled nursing facility? Are they safe enough to be able to be discharged home? Or should they go to some type of rehab facility where they need like high-level neuro rehab? So we're just seeing them for a little bit, making our evaluation, and then if they are staying in the hospital a bit longer, they'll usually work with a PTA.
Okay, gotcha. Well, I'm excited at the end of this clinical for you to give some feedback on our clinic. You don't need to tell us if we're good or bad, but just like, what have you learned, and then how would you say those compare to some other things? So when we talked about growing in physical therapy or through physical therapy school, would you say that you're growing in regards of like clinical skills, like you talked about, being not only competent, but hopefully like as competent as possible? Would you also throw in some different like mental health aspects or physical health? In what ways, let me just package this all up. In what ways do you feel like you've already grown through physical therapy school?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think during PT school, you have to have some type of outlet for yourself, because you can get just so wrapped up in the studying aspect and be so wrapped up in everything that's expected from you academically. And if you don't have some outlet outside of school for yourself, then getting through PT school is going to be way more challenging than it should be because it's already hard enough. So the thing that really helped me was going in, I already had a very consistent routine in terms of exercise and nutrition and had a good friend group. So I think having those things outside of PT school that you can rely on that improve your mental, physical, and emotional health were a game changer just to make me enjoy PT school more, is having those things outside of that.
What do you feel like, I know you generically stated like nutrition and exercise, but what did your routine look like, or what did you find to be the most helpful to stick to throughout like a weekly basis?
Yeah, so for most of PT school, it was usually range between 5 and 7 workouts a week. I'm someone who really likes to do stuff very frequently on a routine basis. And most of the time it consisted of, some specific resistance training throughout the week, usually 4 or 5 lifts a week. And then, around 3 runs a week is typically kind of what I would do.
That sounds pretty good. I am curious though, if you had to look back and recommend to either, you can picture this as somebody who's just getting into PT school, or you can recommend it to Jake just getting into PT school. Now that you're nearing the end, through the things that you've learned, what would you give back to, like, what would you give advice to day one? Say, hey, I just got done with all this. Here's some things you should try to implement now. What advice would you give to that person walking into PT school come this summer?
Yeah, I would say start slow. Like, figure out the things that you enjoy doing the most from a movement perspective. If you like to run, that's your thing, great. If you like to do yoga, if you like to play basketball, if you like to lift weights, find the thing that you enjoy doing the most and make sure that you're doing that a few times a week at least. And then if you can mix in the other things like getting in the gym, lifting some weights, that's great, because oftentimes in healthcare, we don't see a whole lot of examples of people living by what it is that they preach. And I think one of the most important things in the realm of physical therapy is practicing what you preach. And so I think getting in the gym, trying to lift some weights, doing some things like that, that's my personal bias, is going to help make you a better clinician. So if you can find some of those things while you're starting PT school that help you grow as a clinician and be able to relate better to your patients, I think that's just going to help you grow so much throughout PT school. So I would say start small, a few workouts a week, see if you can build on it from there. And if you can get a classmate in there with you too, that's a game changer too. Because you already have very similar schedules.
And you have somebody to hold accountable.
Yeah.
Like, you hold them accountable, they hold you accountable, and you're not going to miss.
Right.
Ultimately, and ideally, they're already like-minded, so it should go pretty well. Exactly. Moving on to the next one, you said that you want to talk about what you've gained from each clinical rotation. It sounds like your rotations have varied quite a bit from pretty much just evaluating people every day in the hospital of all different backgrounds. I know the times that I've been in a hospital, like the one that you're talking about through observations, we saw somebody who had an amputation due to a diabetic foot. We saw somebody who had their 4th heart attack in the last 6 months. We've also seen like people who fell and fractured their skull. So you see quite a bit of variety, I know. So you saw that, then you saw the more traditional post-surgery generic population. That last one, it sounds like much more sports med focus. So if you had to pick like a little pearl that you gained from each one, let's start with the hospital. What do you feel like you really pulled away from the hospital? And if you want to hit a couple, go for it. But like, what's the main points that you took from the hospital?
Yeah, I think the hospital, the main thing was just empathy. I think the biggest piece was just getting really good at sitting back and listening to people who've been through hell, because
or are currently going through it.
Yeah,
right.
At which most of them are. And I think just trying to gain that perspective and really just sit in the mud. I like to think of it that way. Like, get more comfortable at sitting in the mud with people who are stuck in the mud currently, because everyone who's coming in, I mean, I worked with a lot of amputees, and when someone loses their leg, that is a whole new shift in perspective and an outlook on life. And so to have that opportunity as a student to sit there and evaluate that individual and just sit with them in the mud, in the pain, in the grief of all that, and deal with all those emotions that they're experiencing and that I'm experiencing, and try to come out of that with a game plan and let them know that, I'm there on their team. That was just a life-changing experience, to sit with people who are really going through it and just recognize, what a privilege it is to just, have all your appendages, to be able to move each day without restriction and limitation. I think a lot of other realms of PT, we just don't recognize that. But like when you go into the hospital, you recognize the importance of all those things, and you recognize how quickly your life can be turned upside down and changed. So I would really say that the hospital just opened up my eyes and just really provided me with a lot of gratitude and a sense of empathy for people who are really, truly suffering.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. I know when I was training for my half marathon, which is running, and I don't really like running that much, Alan, our first guest and the owner of the compelled fitness gym that we're in, he had some ankle surgery, and so he was moving around for about 8 weeks on a scooter. And this is not to the extreme of losing a limb necessarily, but again, it was perfect timing on like frame shift for me. I was running down a couple miles from me. I was running down the road, and his wife drove by and like shot me a text and was like, "Hey, I just saw you running." And I was like, "Yeah, we were just like hating it right now." And she replied back and said, "Man, I would give anything to go run right now," when he also hates running. But it's so totally different when you cannot do it, right? It's like we sit there and we know that we can and we find comfort in that, but we choose not to. And it like hit me, and I think I started running faster at that point. But it hit me at the right time. It was a really good timing of like, Clayton, no, you get to go run. You get to go train for this half marathon. You may not love running necessarily, which I've definitely gained appreciation for, and I actually like it more now. But it was a good timing where it's like, you have somebody who can't do it right now and is watching you run and being like, man, I really wish I could do that right now. It made me much more grateful at the time. And again, not to the extreme of losing an appendage, but I've had those hit home at good times. And so it's nice to hear you take away the same thing. And for the general public, it's very easy to keep that stuff out of sight, out of mind. Like if you never go into the hospital, you don't see how bad people can have it and how many normal people suddenly have it bad, right? Like most of the people in there were living a normal life, and then a car hit them, and then they tripped down the stairs, and then somebody was driving poor, like whatever it may be. Like those people were living normal lives. They're not just like people in the hospital. And so there's a lot to unpack through there. So moving on to your next clinical, you went to an outpatient PT clinic. It sounds like a lot of total joint replacements along with rotator cuff repairs. What's one of your big takeaways that you took from that population?
Yeah, I would say with that rotation, it was just an appreciation of, just because someone had the same surgery or they're given the same type of protocol by the same surgeon, always, like if someone has a total hip replacement and it's a posterior approach, say, how that person is going to present compared to the other person that you have on your schedule that had the exact same surgery and the same protocol done by the same surgeon can be drastically different. And that aligns so much with, all the information that I've been reading for years. And it's wild to see it like in place, like how dramatic the difference is in how that individual presents, because we all have our own individual social situations and psychological makeup and emotional framework. And just to see how those things play into an individual's plan of care and how those things can impact our physiological structures that are being, that are going through things, I think just really opens up your eyes to recognize there's more to treating people than just the body. And
yeah, I think that's a good point.
that was a big takeaway from that rotation is, people are more than their surgeries. And if you want to treat them to the best of your ability and guide them back to being able to do the things that they care about, that there's more to consider than just the fact that they had a surgery on their hip.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I've had this same experience and many of the experiences where when you look at the facts and you don't take into account context, you're like, you should be further along or you should be here because this other guy is. And sometimes comparisons and stories are fantastic. And sometimes it's like, can you please stop paying attention to the other people? Like, you're a different story. You had a different a different experience going into surgery than they did, which is why they're set up differently, for better or for worse, type of thing. So I think that's a really good observation, and it's interesting how so many things can be similar, yet they couldn't be more different as patients. So going into the third clinical, what pearl did you feel like you took away from working with what sounds like more college athletes, more sports specific stuff? What did you learn through there?
Yeah, I think that was a culmination of everything that I've been wanting to do in terms of PT. And it was just such an awesome experience because I finally got to showcase and practice and dial in all my strength conditioning principles that I've worked on for years, whether it's been in the coaching realm or in other rehab settings or throughout school or just personally with myself. And I got to trial all those things on collegiate athletes throughout their rehab, whether it was an ACL protocol or it was an ankle sprain, whatever it was. I got to trial all those things and, see what things worked and see what things didn't work. And we saw such a high volume of people up there that, and my CI gave me so much freedom and autonomy over my decisions that I felt like I really just grew in terms of confidence that I didn't think was possible as a student. And so that was a very freeing experience.
That's awesome. No, that's really cool to hear. And so I think this will wrap really well into the next point of trying to make movement fun again. I think to most people, when they hear I need to exercise, they picture one of two or three different things. They think jumping on a treadmill for an hour. They think Jane Fonda type exercise classes, right? Where it's just like kick dancing type stuff. Or it's I need to go lift super heavy weight like Ronnie Coleman or Arnold Schwarzenegger. And it's just like, even to me, half that stuff doesn't sound appealing, but I know there's so much more to it than that. So tell me what you mean when you say that you want to make movement fun again. What does that mean to you, and what do you want people to take away from that statement?
Yeah. Growing up, like as kids, we have so much curiosity and we're always messing around with things. We're jumping off furniture. We're throwing around balls. We're, on the playground, jumping around, playing tag, just jumping around, getting injured, doing all kinds of things. We're curious. We let our body move. There's no instruction. We just go. Whereas we get to adulthood and now you're learning about exercise and what's optimal and what you should be doing. And you see so many people who just dread going to the gym or doing things. And it's like, you don't have to just stand on the treadmill, or you don't have to just stand in front of the mirror and do bicep curls. Like, those things are great. Those things are awesome options, and they're going to get you healthy in certain ways. But to a certain extent, I think we've lost so much of the fun, curiosity, free-flowing aspect that can come with movement, where we treat the gym and we treat exercise as our recess.
Yeah.
I personally view the gym as a playground. I view my training time as adult recess, because my goal is to go in there, to mess around, get what I need to get done, but have a fun time. Just be curious, try out new movements. You don't have to be so specific all the time. If you have specific goals, specific plans are going to help you get there. But if you don't have super specific goals and you're just starting out, give yourself some grace. Go in, play around, try out a new machine, try out a goofy movement you saw on Instagram. Nobody cares. You're going in there, you're trying to improve yourself, you're doing something. You're off the couch, which is the first battle in and of itself. So I think we've just lost so much of everything has to be so specific. Mm-hmm. It's got to be 3x10. It's got to be at 70% heart rate. It's got to be at all these things. Who cares?
I feel like we've over-systemized things to a point where it's detrimental.
Yeah. If you're trying to be a professional CrossFit athlete, or you're trying to be number one in your state in powerlifting, or you're trying to break records in the marathon, sure, yeah, you're going to want 80-90% of your training to be pretty dialed in and program specific.
Very protocol-like,
But for the rest of the public, we have 76% of the United States doesn't hit the World Health Organization guidelines, which is 150 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic exercise or 75 minutes of vigorous intensity exercise paired with 2 resistance training workouts a week. Only 24%
Yeah.
of the United States hits those numbers. So clearly we're not doing something right.
But yeah, we still wonder why we're getting unhealthier and unhealthier.
Right. We make exercise way too hard for people.
Hard
We create way too many barriers, too many made up rules, too many made up milestones. You have to do this before you do this. You have to do that before you do that. The main thing is just get people moving. Find a way that you can express yourself through movement in a fun way that you're like, oh yeah, I can repeatedly show up and do this each day.
Should we create like an adult PE class?
Yes.
I mean, honestly, like I think everybody listening right now could picture 4th grade PE and 2 of their favorite games. Like one was called wall ball. You would essentially just like, there was a big painted square on the wall. We had to run down and hit it. But if you hit it and the other opponent caught it when it bounced off the wall, you didn't get the point.
Yeah.
I mean, I could play that for hours, hours, right? And like, think about how much I ran. Like if I had a little pedometer, I probably ran like 6 miles in an hour, just back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. But again, here I am trying to track it and systemize it yet again.
And you weren't worried about being in zone 2.
No, yeah, that's a good point. And I did. And then I got all this agility and jumping and throwing. And it wasn't like, how many times did I throw? Was that 72 or 75 throws?
Right.
Was I throwing at 80%?
Yeah.
Or was I just playing and having a good time?
And
honestly,
what was your miles per hour on your pitch?
That's a good point. Yeah.
It's like, we just create too many barriers and too many rules and make things way more complicated than they need to be. I would love to just, I mean, people are going to think I'm crazy and weird, which I am, but at least I accept it. I think it would be awesome if we just had an adult tag league. Tag was like one of the
they actually do have.
They do, but it's not, there is a tag league, but it's not something that's ubiquitous. It's not something that's everywhere. Yeah. But I think it would be great. Just like, Sundays, you got 25, 30, 35-year-olds just on this field, just playing tag, like playing kickball. Just
for job security, we should start this and just let people injure themselves and then fix them.
Yeah. Use our discount code.
No, right. Yeah. Go to my website in the link below. Honestly, as much as we are kind of joking, we should really do this. I think our generation would actually really bring back PE ultimately. Like, even if you just set up, my thoughts are like, leagues are generally 6 to 8 weeks long, right? And so you go play soccer every Sunday at noon, whatever. Just have it like a PE league where we find 8 games. We go through the YouTubes and TikToks and we go find all the fun games that the majority of all of us millennials played, which I know you're in a different generation, but still, we all of our moms had the same alarm clocks and all of us had the same dining room. So like we probably all played the same PE games. So let's go like create a bank of all of those and just spend an hour every Sunday and we'll just play one game each week and we'll change it week to week ultimately. I mean, I really do think like that would be making movement fun again, because I'm honestly going to be sad if we don't actually do this.
Dude, yeah.
Because it'd be so much more fun. And then think about like the community we would build, the amount of creativity we would create. Because ultimately you're continuously trying to solve like, how do we beat them? Like, how do we play? Like, how do I throw the ball different? And your brain actually gets to play as well, along with your physical body.
Yeah. And there's just an overwhelming amount of evidence showing how important play is throughout your lifespan in terms of decreasing the decline in cognitive capabilities throughout life.
Because it consistently builds new neural pathways.
Yeah.
And tries to make them better and all that stuff.
It's just a beautiful thing, and it's a beautiful art that has just been lost.
Honestly, I think I've got a 1 and a 3-year-old daughter, and you watch them play and it looks like so much fun, and then you start to realize that you don't do that anymore. And I really think the one goal of life is just to stay childlike as long as possible. And so if you have little children in your life, whether they're yours, your niece or nephew, you're a school teacher or something, like bring back as much of what you see in them as possible. Because when you get to 25, 35, 45, 55, you start to see what you're not doing anymore. And you probably realize you're a little bit sad. And those things are significantly correlated of like less play, less movement, and more sadness, to keep things super generic. So stay tuned, guys. And if anyone here knows how to build up a weekly PE class, please reach out to me and we will get something created.
Yeah.
I think this rolls well into, again, training like an athlete for longevity. Let's stick here for a little bit, wrap up, and we'll tell them about what Run 316 is, and then we'll move on with our day. So training like an athlete for longevity. What does that mean to you? What's longevity?
Well, I mean, I'm not like longevity is like a big marketing term nowadays. Like everybody just likes to loves throwing out the word longevity. But kind of what I think of that is just being able to do exactly what you want to do with your brain and body for as long as you possibly can. And if you want to do that, then your life habits have to reflect you wanting to do that. And so if you're 70 years old and you're wanting to be able to throw the football with your grandkids, there's certain things that you should be doing at the age of 20, 30, 40, and 50 that are going to allow you to be able to do those things. There's so many people, I mean, you can think about your own grandparents who have a hard time getting up and down the stairs or getting off the couch, or, you know, they've already had surgeries and stuff. And so I think there's things that we can do earlier in life that afford us more options down the road in terms of how we're moving our bodies at a younger age.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And I think the phrase that I catch myself saying to a lot of patients if they discuss a pain or an injury or something they have a hard time doing is usually, well, when's the last time you did it? And I think I have this thought where in PE, we would always do the same warm-ups, right? You would do high knees, then you would do butt kicks, then you would do karaoke, then you would do side shuffles, then you would do bounding, then you would do high skips. And you would always do these things. And I'm like, how does this carry over to real life? And I've come to determine when you have someone who hasn't done that in a long time or they've never done it, how uncoordinated sometimes people can be because they've never done that or it's been a long time. And it made me realize, like, not only is it probably trying to get your heart rate up, but it's just making sure you can still do it. Like there's some things in life that, actually a lot of things in life that are very perishable. If you stop doing them, you will stop being able to do them. And so like you, in your example, if you want to be able to throw the football with your grandkids, let's entertain you're 25 when you have your first kid and you're 50 when your kid has a kid. So you're 50 as a grandparent, maybe you're 70, whatever it is. You should probably throw a football once a month all the way up until then, or at least prepare for them, right? You find out that your kid is pregnant, like, cool, start throwing football now if you want any chance in hell of that arm working like you want it to when that kid wants to play catch for 4 hours straight. Or just book an appointment with one of us, like, starting now, because you're going to lose it. Like, you're absolutely going to lose it, right? If you don't use it, you lose it. And that is very, very true. So just make sure you're doing whatever you want to do long term periodically, whether it's daily, weekly, monthly. Like, your body does a great job of adapting and keeping those adaptations long term, as long as you continue to expose your body to those over the long term.
Yeah, I mean, have you seen the Masters League like track events where like there's
I've actually
like
not witnessed them.
70 and 80-year-olds who are doing like 100-meter sprints and like they're actually still fast? Like that's
15?
Yeah, like that's what I want to be.
Yeah, that's a good
older.
point.
Like I want to be this 70-year-old who can outsprint the average 30-year-old.
Yeah, there was a TikTok and like Instagram fad that went around, and I loved it so much. And it said, like, I'm not training to be like the prettiest person in the gym. It was mostly men. It was like a man's voice. He's like, I'm training to beat the absolute shit out of my kid in a race, or like my grandkid in a race in 50 years from now. like that is my goal. And it's like, I think a good exercise for everybody listening is picture you at 75. Whether you're male or female, depending on if you have kids, grandkids, great grandkids, whatever it may be, picture that person and where you want to be. And then it is as simple as reverse engineering that. It's not easy, right? It's simple because you're like, okay, here's what I need to do. But it's very hard to implement those things. But it should be very doable for you to create the life that you want then by starting that process now, and then just not budging off those commitments from here to there. And just know that like falling off the wagon is normal, right? Like every now and then you'll gain a couple pounds, or like you go 3 months without weightlifting because like your job has really increased or you have a kid or something like that. So give yourself grace, but ultimately just know all you have to do is repeatedly expose yourself to those over the long term and build something that's going to last the whole life, not trying to build something that's going to last the next 2 weeks. And I think you can really come across those. And so let's go ahead and talk about your running club, which I think goes really well. You're, like you said, practice what you preach. You want more people to do things. And so you might as well create a program or a group or a community that will actually follow that want and that recommendation. And so tell me a little bit about 316 and what you're doing with it to build a community, and then we'll finish out for the day.
Yeah. So Run 316, I just want to give a shout out to our other team leaders, because just the mission of Run 316 would not be possible if I didn't have some help. And so I just want to give a shout out to my brother, Kyle Jindra. He runs a lot of our social media, and he's just been a massive help with the whole process. And then another physical therapist, Dr. Jason Tejano, who is a big runner and a beast. He has been a massive help with it. He's super passionate about building up the running community in Wichita, and he's someone who I am just very grateful that he's a part of the team. And then we just recently brought on one of your coworkers, Dr. Allison Bollinger.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of plans moving forward in 2025 as far as the things that we want to accomplish with Run 316.
Do you have any events coming up in the short term?
We have a collaboration that we're going to be working on that's going to be in February. The date has not been officially set yet, but we're going to do a collab with We Ride.
Yes, we just had a meeting there. That was a lot of fun. It was, I think she calls it rhythmic cycling.
Yeah, yep. So essentially how that's going to work, we're still working on the details with them, but we're going to have an event where they lead everyone through kind of like a little cycling session that's 20, 30 minutes. We're jamming out to the tunes, and then we hop off the bike, and then we go outside and we get a few miles in, and then we're going to go get some food together and stuff. So essentially with Run 316, our big goal is improving the health of the community through running miles, and like our saying is, good vibes, good miles, Run 316, because we want everyone to feel welcome. We want to have a fun community where everyone can come out, meet new people, hang out, have a good time, create good memories while still improving our health. And the Wichita community has just been amazing so far. Like, I remember the first few runs, there was like literally 2-3 people. Sometimes it was just me showing up, and the next thing you know, a few more people trickled in, and then it got to the point where it was an average of 10, and then 15, and then 20, and then we had an event with 25, and I'm like, where can this go? And then we had our first Christmas light run in College Hill, and we had 35 people show up,
which is a significant amount of people, especially like that's a big group to be just running. Yeah, you got a lot of crazy people jumping on board.
It was awesome. Yeah, we want all the crazy people.
Yes, bring them all in.
Runners who
if you're
like
not
to
crazy,
run far,
don't come.
Yeah, exactly. Runners who like to run far are crazy in general. So we want crazy, fun people who like to have a good time and meet people to come out. Everyone's welcome. We come downtown. And currently we've been meeting at Greater Grounds Coffee, which was another part of our mission to support local businesses.
Where's that at?
It is located on Douglas and Washington.
Okay. Yeah, I know what you're talking about, right by the Quick Trip-ish area.
Right next to Quick Trip. And we meet Saturday mornings at 8 a.m. And we typically run 3 miles, and the pace, most of the time, the pace is kind of between 10 and 11 minutes, but all paces are welcome.
And if that's too fast, bring a fast friend to run with you. If it's too slow, bring a slow friend to run with you. Therefore, we grow the community and we get more paces shown.
Exactly. Yeah, because Run 316 is not a race. Our runs are not a race. This is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to get in some easy miles and meet some cool people and make some fun memories. It's as simple as that. Our goal is to support local businesses. We've got some fun plans in terms of health workshops in the future and companies that we want to work with, but it's new. It's been fun. Wichita's been awesome. And if you want to follow kind of along with our journey, feel free to follow us on Instagram at run_316. We're always posting on there if you have questions about anything like that. So
that sounds really cool. And I do want to let people know that I've worked out most of my life, like well over half my life I've worked out, but I still would debatably not call myself a runner. And I think a lot of people have a hard time identifying themselves as a runner, but I've ran a half marathon and I trained for 13 weeks for it. So if I look back at myself during that time and I instead saw someone else doing that, I would be like, no, you're a runner. You ran weekly. You did a lot of miles. You're a runner. If I have to take my own advice, then I would say I'm a runner too. And I think that's hard for a lot of people. So I could see it being scary for some to show up on a Saturday morning, especially if they're by themselves. And so if that's you, then do what Jake just recommended and go follow them on Instagram and get follow them for a little bit. Check out their stories, check out their posts. And if it's still scary to you to show up on that Saturday morning at 8 a.m. at Greater Grounds Coffee, then please just bring a friend. Bring somebody else who is, quote, not a runner. Bring them in and be like, hey, like, let's just go try this thing. 3 miles isn't that far. Hell, we could walk it if we have to, because I know you guys will still be there and very supportive. And you even mentioned that you wanted to bring on at some point in time somebody who kind of leads the walk jog, because you have permission to go slow. You have permission to walk and jog. Just cover the grounds, like get there, ultimately. And so I really encourage you to get out there. You will see, like he said, Dr. Allison Bullinger, if you're familiar with our clinic out there as well. And if you have any other questions, please follow us on Instagram, TikTok, reach out to me on Facebook. On Instagram and TikTok, my handle is at the Doc Dir. That is at THEDOCDIR. And then you can also go follow at run__316. Jake, would you like to also put out your socials so they can go follow some of the content that you put out personally?
Yeah, I don't really utilize one form of social media. I only have Instagram. It's just Jake_Jindra. Last name spelled Jindra.
And he puts a lot of good stuff out where it's very applicable, where he'll say like, hey, you should move more. But then you swipe and you have all these different ways that you could move more. And then you swipe again and then you have a bunch of research to back it up. So it's a really good job of doing very applicable things, giving you good ideas to where it's tangible and you can implement it immediately, and a lot of research to back it up to show you that there is proof in the pudding. And there's a reason that he is at our clinic, is because I know he will help us with our mission, and he is going to help us help more people. And then eventually he will be out there on his own helping more people as well. So Jake, thank you for coming on today. And if you guys haven't yet, we are getting more and more content out there to help teach you how to heal without harm. Thanks, Jake.
Appreciate you, brother.